essentially a bowler who batted. Yeah.
Mm.
Gary Bartlett was something of a feature of the club, and of course he was highly successful. He had gone through India, I think, at 6 for 30 something. So he was arguably New Zealand's fastest ever bowler. He played for New Zealand with spectacular success in a rather short-lived career because he had back problems. But he was part of the club, and I can distinctly remember training with him when he was at the nets and I was a youngster, and he was a fearsome character. Did you feel the same when you were training and facing up to him? Tell us a bit about Gary Bartlett.
Yes, we were actually we were quite good mates off the field for some time, and still are.
Yes, he was social. Yeah.
Like, I hear from Bartlett probably every second week, rings up and has a chat. But he was probably the most fearsome bowler that I have had the experience of having to face in the nets. Not in a game, but in the nets. Gary used to bowl no balls, big no balls. So instead of bowling off 22 yards, he'd bowl off about 18. And he was quick. He was real quick. And I used to fear for my life, because in those days we didn't have arm guards. We might have had a pair of batting gloves with spikes on, which absorbed nothing.
No thigh pad.
Helmets? No, who wore to wear a helmet?
Didn't know about it.
And here Bartlett would come in and bloody chuck one at you, and it was quick. And on practice wickets, he was effing dangerous.
Yes. Yes, you had to be brave.
I survived.
Yeah.
And I used to say, Bartlett, you're my mate, don't kill me. You're going to fucking kill me.
I can remember when people were told, and I'd be one of them, all of us would be, Tomo, fish, pad up, you're next in the nets. There would be a sort of a brief argument which net one was going in, depending on which net Bartlett was bowling in.
I'll go in the second net.
And usually the youngster got pushed in the Barter's net.
I played second grade.
Second grade. This was
I played the odd game of senior cricket,
yeah.
but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was a fill-in if somebody broke down.
Right.
I'd say, Tomo will play, he's okay. But my aspirations were probably never to be a senior cricketer, because my concentration was not playing cricket. 4 days out of 5 I'd be Tarkika or Winton or Alexander or West Coast or whatever. I was basically always away, which
on the road.
Yeah.
So you're playing cricket there. You got into administration. You obviously had a bent towards that. Strong opinions, pleasantly outspoken. Pig-headed, all those things that makes for good administrators. So you got into club committees, that sort of thing?
Yeah, when we played at Hagley, we had 4 clubs administering Hagley. That was before the council took over. And the 4 clubs basically ran Hagley as such, under the auspices, obviously, of the Canterbury Cricket Association. But I was the mainstay of the West Christchurch University side of Hagley.
And that committee was that ran?
It was the Hagley Park Grounds Committee.
Hagley Park Grounds Committee.
And we had to provide, 1, the accommodation, and 2, the salary of the grounds man at the time. So that was part and parcel of the subs that are paid by the cricketers.
Right.
And we did that quite successfully.
Yeah.
The council then, it got in a too hard basket, especially when we departed from Hagley. That's another story. But the council then came in, and seeing it was council ground, the onus was really on them to provide that service rather than the clubs.
Right. Prepare the
Michael
pitches
provided that the clubs run reasonably well.
They do.
The club do it a hell of a lot better than the council will ever.
Yeah.
But to do that, you've got to have a certain amount of expertise
That's
in
right.
a whole raft of things like grass growth, grass temperatures, fertilisers, equipment, and all that sort of jazz. And you probably don't find too many clubs that ever groom anybody to actually do that, because it's 9 times out of 10 it's always done on a volunteer basis anyway.
Yeah. So often a retired farmer or
Yeah,
someone
that
who's
type of thing. Somebody
semi-retired.
who actually understands
Yeah.
grassroots.
It's an expensive exercise, though. Outline some of the sort of expenses you might have to come across as a groundsman in a club, which you were.
Well, you do it on the smell of an oily rag, and you pick up favours and...
What are you required to supply in terms of resource?
Well, equipment's the big one, which is a capital expenditure. Like the Burnside club's lucky in that we've got some, for the size of the club, we've got very good facilities with rollers and mowers and scarifiers and roller mops and that type of thing, and covers. But that's taken some considerable amount of expertise and scrounging and being cunning. It all costs money.
Yeah, it does, yeah. The gaudy yellow roller out there, how the club came about that roller, because it was always struggling for equipment. I see a smile come on your face there, Tomo.
Well, knowing a little bit about turf culture and compaction and soils and so on, and Christchurch being Christchurch, you've got to treat them very specifically in a certain sort of way, and you've got to have the right equipment. And we have had a succession of rollers which have been underweight, not driven the right way, water not being supplied the right quantities at the right time, rolled at the right time. So I said, there's only one way we're going to fix this, and that's to get a roller. And when I say a roller, I mean a roller. It's got to weigh in the vicinity of sort of 3 tonne to be of any significance whatsoever. So I screwed and scraped and spoke to a few people, and finally one fell off the back of a truck, and we resurrected it, and it's a very good roller.
Yes, it is.
We owe a certain amount of kudos to people like March Construction and so on. Long story, cut it short, net result is it's the right roller, it's the right weight, and used at the right time provides very good wickets throughout Burnside. It's a 3-tonne roll.
And today the pitches have really improved out of sight over recent years.
I'd like to think I was sort of instrumental in the irrigation, application of water, fertiliser, rolling, cutting, etc., to make 4 first class, well, perhaps not first class, but 4 very, very good senior wickets.
Good quality.
Available at the one site.
In terms of your input into and your legacy with Canterbury cricket, you were talking about selections that you were a selector. What levels were you a selector at and managed?
I was part of the original post office tournament, which was under 18, the very first one, which was held in Palmerston North. And at that stage, I was part of the New Zealand Junior Cricket Board.
Right.
That's where that inaugurated from. And we held our first tournament in Palmerston North. And then it sort of snowballed from there. The Braben, I think, was disbanded at that stage, and there was a national under-20 tournament. And one of the first people to play for Canterbury as a 15-year-old was Chris Harris.
Right. Well, that had to be in the 80s, didn't it?
And I had the misfortune or the fortune to have Chris Harris on my side, who was a silly little bugger in those days, but delightful.
So you were selector of the Canterbury team?
Yeah, I was selector of that, and had a coaching role, but I was not a qualified coach.
Right. You managed New Zealand sides?
Yeah. I then managed the New Zealand under-20 sides and under-19 sides, which then toured Australia in particular. That was when Jeff Howarth and myself ran that tour. And I just rolled on from there, managing the Canterbury side.
Yep. Tell us a bit about
for a long time. The whole concept of cricket was sort of changing, and it was becoming semi-professional, professional. In my days, it was very semi-professional. Some of the players got paid, administrators didn't get paid. We did it just purely for the love of the game. Organisation, I suppose, probably more than anything else. It just rolled on from there. We were very successful.
So this was the era of sort of the second half of that great era of Canterbury. The Cairns,
the Cairns, Jamons, those sorts of people.
Yeah, Astor. Bonds. Yep.
It was, and from there it snowballed now to being run on what I think a quite professional basis, where you have definitely a paid coach, you've got a paid physio,
personal trainer,
you've got Uncle Tom Cobley and everybody else. Yep. And in general terms, I think New Zealand cricket is run reasonably well. Sure, there's infighting amongst associations, but you're always going to get that anyway. Not a good thing, not a bad thing. It's just what it is.
You finished being manager for Canterbury, which is probably the input of your active involvement in about when, early 2000s?
2005, I think, probably.
Right.
Ish.
Yep.
Ish. As I say, it became professional. I didn't wish to be part of any professional group at that stage. I'd done my thing, I thought, I'm sure. And now, as I say, it's run on a much more structured situation, but I'd like to think that I might have been one of the forerunners of ensuring that a certain amount of professionalism came in from the players, with assistance, obviously, from the association, and that's worked reasonably well.